Today, we're going to dive into epic power gates from West Mountain Radio. Today, we're going to dive into a device I've had for a little while. I've run a few of these epic power gates from West Mountain Radio in my vehicle, and my experience with them, and I've had them for almost about a year. I love these devices in terms of being able to have the most flexibility, the most control of being able to charge and maintain my DC battery systems that I have in my vehicle. For ham radio specifically, these devices can't be beat. I mean, there are a bunch out there that you can get varying degrees of configuration. But from a standpoint of having both a MPPT controller, a power source, 12 volts, whether it's a physical power supply or a battery or two batteries for that matter, powering several other 12 volt DC devices, you can't go wrong with this device. It supports many different battery chemistries: lithium, lead, lipo. And it's all configurable both through a jumper settings on the inside, which I'll go over in a bit, or through software controlled through a USB connection in the device itself. So today, there was just an email that kind of went out from West Mountain about how they were announcing a new update to their firmware, which is version 1.34, I think it is, or 4.3 at the time of this video. And it fixed some of the issues between powering or getting charging issues between the controller, meaning the solar, and regular battery charging, as well as some minor differences in the firmware to improvements and stuff like that. So I decided that I'm going to put a quick video out because I didn't see much in terms of how to update the firmware on this device, and I'll hopefully walk you through it a little bit. It was a little challenging for someone if you've never programmed these devices, and I'm also going to kind of go through some of the features that I have enabled on this through programming through the computer interface. So we're going to dive in and let's talk a little bit about what you're going to need to get going. And then I'll walk you through some of the screens of how to connect to the device, how to flash the firmware on it, and get it updated to the latest firmware fixes. So let's get into it. West Mountain Radio has a diagnostics tool that I'll link down below in the description for being able to update these devices as well as configure them depending on what the model you have and the device type, and whether you're using their rig runner or their DC products or whatever the case. So first and foremost, obviously you're going to need a Windows laptop configured. Windows 10, Windows 11 is perfectly fine. Windows 10 will require you installing a few other drivers. Windows 11, most of the native stuff in it will work with the software, and installation is pretty straightforward. Now, you will also need to download from their website the latest firmware update, and at the time of this recording, it's 1.34. Any prior versions are obviously going to be overwritten, so make sure you download the latest one off their website, and you're also using the latest utility from a rig runner for the West Mountain Radio diagnostic tool. Now, one of the things that I have done with my rig expert that maybe I want to pass on to you is I prefer, when I set this up initially, to use the internal jumper settings on the device. Now, there's no problem with that, but I wanted to have more flexibility in the future, especially that once you get this mounted, you've got two set screws on the bottom of this device. And this came out of my truck for my All-Star setup. And so I had to unmount it from the MOLLE panel and undo a bunch of different screws. So my advice is if you're going to pick up one of these and permanently mount it somewhere that you may not be able to get access to it without having to take it all apart, go with this software flashable route. And so what you're going to do is once you take the screws out of the bottom of the device, you're going to carefully take the cover off, and it's a pretty tight fit, but although the electronics inside are spaced out enough that you can easily get the cover off. And once you get the cover off, you're going to note that in the device there are a number of jumper settings, and the manual consults those jumper settings specifically to a couple of things. Obviously setting the battery chemistry, and then the number of total amps that you think your MPPT controller, or say solar or any other method that's pulling or charging the battery when it's not in use, you can set the max number of amps. And so for my setup, I have in the vehicle a 50 amp hour lithium Redodo battery, and so I've got that chemistry initially set for lithium, and then I had set the voltage for 5 amps. So what I've decided is that obviously I want to have more control. Say if I want to change things in the configuration, I'm going to leave these jumpers off, and basically all you do is just pull the jumper off, and you can tuck them away. I would say from my old PC days of when jumpers were a thing, you're just going to want to hang them off of the jumper itself, just in case you ever have to, say, sell this or give it back or donate it or whatever. If you pass this on to somebody, having that capability versus, say, the USB connection might be a better way to go for somebody who might be, we'll say, software adverse. So yeah, with this, the firmware, I'll post the link from West Mountain Radio on some of the fixes that they had within the software, as well as some of the enhancements that they've done. And they've done quite a few that I thought were well worth me upgrading this in the field. So let's kind of get into it, and I'll walk you through the interface. The only thing you will need is a USB A to A cable. And we're talking about the micro USB connection, not the newer USB C type connections. Now, hopefully maybe in the future West Mountain Radio will catch up and realize that these cables are getting harder and harder to find, and most people aren't really using them now that everything's going USB-C. So maybe they'll improve that interface on the device. But that USB port is at least in a good spot for programming capabilities. So this is that USB port right here, and it is the old format, as you see here in the shot of the micro USB. It is in a great spot, like I said. So in the future, and why I'm recommending you go to a software type programming is you can easily just pop the little grommet off the top here, plug your cable in, put this in diagnostic mode, and then program it or flash it or do whatever you need to do, and you're off to the races and working. So let's take and put this back together. Let me walk you through the software of how to firmware flash it, as well as walk you through some of the programming features, because what I found in some of my discovery is that West Mountain Radio needs to do a little better job in explaining how to get into the programming mode, because the way their instructions are written, you can easily overlook the step, because it's not a clear step to define that says go into diagnostic mode and press this key in order to make it happen. So we'll go through that. I'll show you what I've learned, and hopefully that'll save you some time and effort and stress in trying to figure out how to get into the programming of this device software-wise. So let's head over to the computer screen, and I'll walk through the install, and hopefully we'll show you how to get it all flashed. All right, once you've installed the software and it is been rebooted, your PC that is, you're going to see that down here in the bottom right-hand corner there's a small little WR device diagnostics program here. By default, the software sets itself up to automatically run at boot or anytime the PC is rebooted. Here's a little tip if you're not one of those types that really just don't want to see this stuff, and I don't really like running extra software if I don't need to. There is this, if you go into utilities down here at the bottom within the diagnostic utility, you'll see that the menu says do not start on reboot. And the benefit to that is that the software has to be manually restart or installed or started up next time you want to use it. But you can uninstall it so it doesn't waste resources sitting in the navigation bar, because 9 times out of 10, once you firmware flash this, you're probably not going to need to do anything further with the PC that you can't restart the software on your own. So what you'll now need to do is cable in your Epic Power Gate to your PC. And by default, you obviously need to power up the power gate in order for the device to be recognized in Windows, because it does not pull power from the USB-C or the USB-A port. So you're just going to need a quick, 12-volt battery source or power supply that will plug into the Epic Power Gate that has power poles. And so once you plug it in, you'll see that the device goes green, and you did hear the little Windows chime, and it is assigned, or at least been detected, as to what the power port is or what the COM port is. And you're just probably going to have to do a quick refresh here from the menu. And so once you do a refresh, you'll see that the device will show up in your list. From a right click on your menu, you're going to click Update Firmware. This window will pop up and say you need to power off your unit. And all you're going to do is unplug the power source here, and you're going to then hold in the suspend button while you're plugging the power source back in. You'll hear the Windows chime of the device kick back in, and then at that point the device will be in programming mode and allow you to then set it up. Once you're in the right interface and the device is responding, you'll get this USB loader window, and at that point you'll select, or it had already selected the device name for you and the firmware version that is available to install from. And then you're just going to click Update Firmware. It'll go through the process of updating the firmware, and once you get the complete success message, everything will then at that point be updated. You can pull the power cord out and let the device restart again, and everything should come up correctly. Now, if you have any failures or issues, I say obviously open a ticket with West Mountain Radio, but there is a way to install other versions, previous versions of firmware. I think you have to get that from support, but you can actually just change the directory to find your version of the firmware, and you can download that from their software and install it separately, just in case something may have crashed or been an issue or whatever. You can also go into the utility screen here and do a firmware updater here, and this will update the device the same way we just went through by updating the configuration through the software. And that will get you flashed and updated to the latest version of the firmware, and the device will be all set. All right, so now that you've flashed the firmware, everything was successful. Maybe you want to set the device up to be able to program at any time, via the USB cable in the future. For whatever reason, you might change battery chemistry, or you have to change current values or a number of different variables. Now is where you're going to have to, if you haven't already made the change inside the device, you're going to need to remove the jumper settings and put them on individual pins so they're no longer shorting out for battery types and amp current types. So you're going to make those changes, button it back up, fire the device back up, and we are then going to walk through how you do this. Now, I want to put the little caveat around here. This is where I ran into a little bit of a problem trying to figure out how to follow the steps in the manual, because on page 10 in at least the Epic Power Gate manual, it has one line about how to use the USB interface, and then it kind of doesn't give you any more details except that you have to hit the S key in the diagnostics menu. Now, if you don't actually read it word for word and realize that it's giving you a series of steps, you'll probably breeze right over it thinking you're reading. Because when you read a manual, I don't know about you, I usually end up reading it very paraphrased, and if I have to go back to a certain spot, I'll reread it a couple of times just so I understand the flow. They need to have that a little bit more clearer when, and maybe even a screenshot of what that looks like when you're in the diagnostic software, because the name of the software is the diagnostic software. The menu that you're going into, or the choice, is called diagnostics as well. So it can be very confusing in their naming of things, and so they really should have had a little bit more clarity in the pictures. So let's go through those steps here on my install here, and hopefully that'll fix and clear up any future configurations with this device. All right, so let's dive back into the software here. First thing you're going to do is locate the COM port for the Epic Power Gate, and then double click on that port itself. This will bring up the diagnostics window that the manual refers to. This is the confusing part that I ran into, and only by discovery and tinkering found this is how you access the menu. You know you're connected to the device, as all of the data readings from the device will come in consecutive order as it's reading the COM port. And then at this point, this is where you're going to hit the S key on your keyboard to engage the menu. Now, you'll be prompted through several categories in the programming of this Epic Power Gate. And so your best bet is to consult the manual that I referenced for all of the field values and what they should entail. Now, noting in this screenshot, the values that are currently listed in the brackets are what's been last programmed. And so if you want to accept the defaults, you just hit the return key and it will accept it. Once you've gone through all of the prompts in the programming interface, you'll get to the end and it will ask you to commit it. And once it's committed, you'll then be returned back to the status window where it's providing you voltage readings and a number of other details. And that's it. Now you've programmed your Epic Power Gate, and you can do that in the field anytime. Well, there you have it. That's how we program and get the Epic Power Gate up to date in its firmware, as well as set up some of the software programmable settings. And so I've got it now all neatly tucked back in to my truck here. And I will probably go over in a future video all of this that you see here, my All-Star and Hotspot, as well as a couple other of my configurations here. Let's head on back in and do a quick wrap up. Well, there you have it. We successfully programmed the Epic Power Gate. Everything is now on the latest firmware. I've walked you through some of the settings that you might want to set from the USB programming cable side. We're going to just button this back up and get it back installed in the truck, and then we'll test it out a little longer and see how it goes. And so, yeah, if you've got any questions or comments about any of the steps in this video, feel free to hit me up in the comments below, or you can always email me anytime, and you can find all that information up on my website at n1jur.com. And as always, thanks again. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, like, and share this video out to other folks that might have a Epic Power Gate. And with that, thanks again for watching, and put it on.